Now you got sound. Hey, gang. It always helps to turn the microphone on, doesn't it? Listen, if you're watching live, please leave me a note in the chat. Let me know who you are and where you're watching from. Some of you have already gotten to that. And if you're watching the replay, no worries. Drop a comment below the video. Let me know that you were here. Already we got JP in Jersey. Gabe is here in Miami. Grant from LA. Carl in Illinois. Patrick is here. Let's see. Spinning Wheels in Arizona. Scott, sorry. Ben down in Houston. Joe in California. Alvin in Virginia. Canadian Saurus Rex in Montreal. Mike, how are you? Calvin in Maine. In Spirit Studios from Spokane, Washington. Lynn in New York. Eric in Connecticut. We got people from all over the place. And just for the record, it's Ben's fault that I was all discombobulated when I got on here because of the question he left in the chat. I wanted to try and find the file really quick, but I got it. And Ben, yes, I'll address your question in detail tonight. All right, gang. So all of you, thank you. You're part of a growing global community of photographers in over 100 countries who tune in to watch The Last Frame every week. And for that, as always, I'm going to work really hard to help you with your photography tonight. And it, of course, would help a lot more people learn about The Last Frame if you could just do me a real quick solid, hit that thumbs up below the video, right? It's not for my ego, it's simply for the algorithm, right? The more thumbs up, the more YouTube will recommend the show to other photographers, which they've been doing more of lately, which is always really good, right? And of course, while you're down there, do feel free to go ahead and hit that share button. Let your photography friends know. Come on. I know you got friends, and I know you got friends with cameras, right? So let your photography friends know that we are streaming live on YouTube right now. You can hit that button, or you can share the link that I just dropped in the chat. It's lastframe.live. So there's only really one thing in photo news this week because, you know, like, I don't want to get into the weeds like so much of the blogs do, but I have been trying to make it an ongoing theme, if you've been watching for a while, to share with you the winners from photography award or photography competitions, okay? And let me be really clear. This is in no way intended to insinuate that you should be participating in competitions. I am not even trying to encourage you to participate in competitions. That is strictly up to you. If you like competition, knock yourself out. If you don't like it, if you prefer to avoid it and you're not into it, that's cool too, right? So, but why then do I show you these? Because I want you to see great examples of images that are held up and considered to be excellent, hence award-winning, right? And so I think it's, you know, it's good to share. And what I particularly like about this one this week is this is the 12th annual Mobile Photo Awards. So it goes without saying, these are images that are taken with mobile phones, okay? And they've got a bunch of different categories, but let's hit the first one here. This one, this is the grand prize winner. So this guy is an Australian. He's from down under, okay? I don't know if we have any of our Aussies here tonight. We got Gerhard in Austria, but I haven't seen any of the folks from Australia show up tonight. But please notice in his little portfolio that you see here on the screen, and here, let me actually share the link to this. So that way, if you guys want to go check it out in person after the show, feel free to do that, okay? There's that link, and I'll make sure that I add it below the video for those of you that are watching later. But again, the reason why I point these out is there is a simplicity to these images. Almost always, there is a simplicity. Colors tend to be brighter, or if they are black and white, they tend to be very strong black and white, very dramatic, and subjects are readily distinguishable, meaning there's no kind of like Where's Waldo going on with just lots of chaos and then you're trying to figure out what is this really a picture of, right? So these are the kinds of things that, you know, I think are really, and this image here, by the way, if you don't know who Peter Turner is, or one of his interns who's very well famous, also Eric Miola. Those are two names. If you follow my photo quotes, you've seen quotes from them too, and hopefully you followed the links to their website. But this image here in particular screams Peter Turner. And that's taking nothing away from it. That's basically speaking to the brilliance of it, and especially since it's done with a smartphone. Absolutely love it. But this one also very, very similar in style. So it's worth taking a look through here. This is the photo essay winner. So some of this stuff is kind of very news oriented. There's images from Ukraine. There's some other topics here. This is small town rodeo. Some absolutely gorgeous images. Smartphones, gang. So it drives home a couple of points. Number one, these images are interesting. They draw you in. They hold your attention, but also they are great quality images. I mean, look at the graphic elements in these images taken from Dubai. Just absolutely incredible, right? So, I have to add the dig, right? It ain't about the camera, gang. And here's proof positive, right? But the point is, make it a point to take a look through this stuff. These are the images that judges look at and that people look at. And because honestly, I agree. I think these images are incredible. So it's worth paying attention to them. There's a lot that you can learn from those images. Okay. All right. Some other quick notes, upcoming stuff, teaching updates, right? So this weekend, actually, I guess it would help if I was on the right screen. Saturday, I'm going to be in Austin, Texas. So I head down there Friday. I am doing a talk, which I'm just going to rub it in because you can't see it. It's sold out. So if you didn't sign out, you missed up on this one, but you can come see me in the afternoon. Saturday morning, I'm doing a talk at Precision Camera and Video, which, by the way, if you ever get to Austin, Texas, you want to visit their main store. Leave your credit cards at home. It's like photography heaven. Just gorgeous store. It's huge. They have everything. They've got a massive studio and classroom. Really, really awesome place. But doing a talk called Mastering Creativity, which is actually a free talk, but again, sold out. And then in the afternoon, this is a really cool part. And I checked before I came online. There's a few spots left for this. I'm doing an event with Sony and Nanlite and Precision Camera. We are taking over the Q2 soccer stadium in Austin, Texas. We're going to have a bunch of models, and we have access to the entire stadium. It's not during a game, so the stadium's empty. We can go anywhere except on the pitch, and we are going to have a blast. So I'll be doing a demo to get things started, and then we'll be shooting all over the stadium. This particular stadium, if you look it up online, it's very new, very contemporary, lots of bright colors. So, I'm going to be having a lot of fun with that. And then after that, well, actually, yeah. So after that, let me go back over to my list. Where is it here? April 11th. Best practices of digital file management for photographers. A lot of you, I'm finding out, could really use this. So if you're one of those folks that has like Ziploc bags with all your SD cards that you've just never gotten rid of, or you've got 20 hard drives, some of them plugged in, some of them not plugged in, or God forbid if you're still burning CDs or DVDs and taking them to the bank and putting them in a safe deposit box. If you don't have a great filing system, you want to sit in on this class. I have been shooting digital professionally since the year 2000. So that's 23 years of digital files that I have. I can find any image that I have taken in the last 23 years in less than 3 minutes. And that's all because of a good filing system, right? It's not a good memory. It's a good filing system. So be worth your while to check that out. Lot that you can learn, a lot of good concepts. And I even help you solve the problem. If you've got 10 years worth of files and you don't want to have to go back and reorganize all those, I have a solution for you. So that's that one coming up. And then the big one, which I've been talking about for a while, and I checked on this one today. Also, there's still, if it's going to load here. There we go. There are still a couple spots left in my class. This is April 23rd to 28th, Texas School. This one's right outside of Dallas, Texas, and Addison, Texas. What's cool about this, aside from the fact that there is just an absolutely incredible list of instructors and topics. I mean, we've got everything from landscape to senior photography to maternity, all kinds of versions of portraiture, event photography, video production. There's business classes, there's retouching classes, you name it. But here's what's cool. you spend the entire week with one instructor. So if you think that you can keep up with me for a week, right? So that's like starting on a Sunday afternoon and going until midday on Friday. One instructor. So it's a deep dive. And for me, the title of my talk is Do Different, Be Different, Create Images That Stand Out, right? It's a complete start to finish of what I do, where the ideas come from, how we create the shots, how we plan them, how we do the prep, how we find the models, how we get into the studio, how we shoot it, how we do the posing, how we communicate, even how we do the culling and the post-processing, all of it. And we're going to talk about how you can make money with this stuff, because that's one thing I don't talk a lot about on here, because a lot of the people that watch on YouTube really aren't interested in the money part. But believe me, there's really good money in it if you want to build that out as your business model. So that's coming up in April. I will also share the link for Texas School with you. Again, you can find all these links also underneath the video. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always reach out, send me a message, and I will do my best to help you. All right, so our image for tonight, let me just reset everything here and get the image. We'll do that breakdown, and then I got a couple questions that came in from my Facebook group. Actually, one's that came in via email last week, and I told the guy that I would address it here. But we've got time, so type away. Look, if you're here, seriously, what are you struggling with? What's on your mind photographically? What can we work on tonight? But the cover image, let's go over that one really quick. So obviously on the cover of tonight's video, you can actually only see a little piece of this, but this is the full image as I created it. So there's a couple things for me to point out before I show you how it was done. And then also Ben had some questions about the makeup aspect of it and how clean the lines are, etc. Right? So I've talked about this in several different venues before, but I want to mention it again now. You may be noticing, especially over the last couple weeks now since I started doing this shot breakdown each week, that the overwhelming majority of my images are 16:9 format, right? So basically video format, and they're shot horizontal. And yes, there's a reason for that. At this point, it's kind of how I look at the world. But where it came from and where it evolved from is it's been 10 years now that I've been doing stuff for video with YouTube and also shooting video, etc. And with the teaching that I'm doing, the overwhelming majority of my photography is going to go into a 16:9 format somewhere, whether it be a video, whether it be a PowerPoint type presentation, whatever it is. So if I can help it, I like to avoid having, the bars on the side, right? It's just one of those little quirks. So frequently what I do is I shoot my images and make sure that my subject doesn't touch the edge of the frame in camera. So this image was shot horizontally, but the frame ended pretty much where you see the mouse going right there. That way, in post, it's super simple to just expand the background out. And what's great about this whole concept is I can use this as a 16:9 image as though it were full frame, full format, right? I can crop this vertically and even add a little space to the top if I need to, and it could work as a magazine cover. And I can crop it square, and it'll look great on Instagram. So by shooting this kind of format for my studio work, obviously this doesn't work for every single picture that I ever take when I'm shooting baseball, for instance. I can't do this. But when I'm working in the studio, it's a way for me to basically get a lot of extra versatility out of the image. And I'm not sacrificing resolution because I'm basically shooting full frame, but then I'm adding. So I'm actually adding pixels to the shot, right? So that's part of it. So let me switch over here. And Ben had a question. So actually, I'll do the lighting last because I'm going to go back to Ben's question. He said, I hope you're going to talk about this image, especially the super sharp lines and curves on the makeup. Is that me helping the makeup artist, or did they use stencils or something? The answer to that, Ben, is a little bit of both, actually, okay? So let me just, here is the original file. Now, Ben posted that question literally right before we went live, so I didn't have time to get everything set up. So this is basically just essentially a JPEG of the original file, but this is unedited. So this is straight out of camera. This is what I was working with, okay? So to answer your question, the answer is yes, both, right? It's one, working with good makeup artists. I can't stress enough, and Ben, I know that you're going to be in my class at Texas School, so you're going to hear a whole lot about that. Not to get you too excited either, but I'm negotiating aggressively to get us a makeup artist and hairstylist. So fingers crossed. Can't promise that yet, but I'm working on it. So number one, it's very important to be working with, not just working with a makeup artist and a hairstylist, but working with a good makeup artist and hairstylist. And by the way, let me also be clear, good means someone that you can collaborate with. That's step one. Yes, you want them to have skills, but you need to be able to collaborate with that person. So, this particular image, there are pieces of it that are ideas of mine, pieces of it that are ideas of my makeup artist and hairstylist, etc. And so there's quite a bit of collaboration that goes into these things, right? But she did a great job with the makeup. So yeah, I'll bring the file back up on the screen here. There's the finished file. So the big things that changed, so I'll go ahead and I'll point out one of the things that I did to the file. I want you to look at this bun up on the top on the camera right side of the face. There is the original version of it. So we could not get the depth out of it. And this was something that we kind of went back to the chair a couple of times to try and get that built up, and it just wasn't cooperating, right? And that happens. So sometimes, that's where you're going to go ahead and say, all right, you know what, let's get it as best as we can, and then we're going to add it in post. But you will see there are spots. In fact, here, let me find a couple here, Ben, and I can point them out to you where I did kind of clean up the makeup. So spots where I did a fair amount of cleanup work. In fact, let me see if I can set these side by side. Yeah, all right. So if you look at the dots here on the forehead, so there's a spot where, obviously I did some cleanup to make them perfect. You can't expect that a makeup artist is going to nail that. They're just not, right? Not without taking a tremendous amount of time. And the problem that you run into, if they have to keep going back and kind of fixing things while they're doing it, you're actually more likely going to make the makeup worse than you're going to make it better, right? So my task from a makeup artist is get it as close as possible. And then, yes, I'm going to go through and I'm going to clean up those lines. You can see like the lines going through here. You see there's a little smudge right there on the original. None of that is bad to me. That is all stuff that in a shot like this, I am fully expecting that I'm going to have to do. And then you'll also notice, because these hair pieces that we used for the wraps, they're expensive, right? So we had a finite amount of them. I added another layer of them at the bottom in post by basically duplicating this and shifting it so that I could make it a little bit more of a collar. And so if you look really close at this space right here and this space right here, you can see that I also stretched her neck just a little bit to be able to add that, right? And the best part of it is none of you would have picked up on that if I didn't show you the before. The reason I point that out is not to say, ha ha, I got you. It's to make the point that when it comes to doing heavy manipulation in an image, and I wouldn't actually call this heavy because I've done much more in some images, but compared to what some of you are probably doing, this is heavy manipulation. Part of the challenge with that is to make it so that it's not terribly obvious, right? So no different than, Ben, you asked about how much of that makeup is exactly the way the makeup artist did it and how much did I assist, right? You're a photographer. you've already worked with a makeup artist, so you kind of understand, like, that looks like amazingly good for just a makeup artist, right? The average person looks at that image is never going to pick up on that. They're going to look at that and say, oh my God, that makeup artist is just incredible. In fact, they never say, oh my God, you're so good at retouching. They're going to look at that picture and say, oh my God, that makeup artist is incredible. And I'm going to say, yep, I'm really lucky to have an amazing makeup artist. And I am, because that makeup is amazing. But one of the other things you also have to keep in mind that I do, which, well, it's not about being smart or dumb. Some might think I'm dumb for doing it, but look how close I shoot, right, to this image and to these details. If I backed up on her and put her in more of a costume, well, then there wouldn't be as much need to do as much detailed retouching as what I've done, right? Because it wouldn't be as big and as obvious. But I choose to shoot really, really close. So that means that pretty much, everything that is there, good, bad, or otherwise, it's going to be very obvious in the end, right? So I know when I shoot these kind of shots with makeup and when I shoot them close, and a lot of shots I shoot even closer than that, I know that I'm making a conscious decision when I go into the shot. You're going to be doing a lot of post-production. But that post-production is cleanup, right? It's not like I created the makeup in post, which I've been known to do, right? But no, this makeup, it's there. It's in the shot. This was a matter of enhancing things that we couldn't do in camera, the hair pieces, right? And then taking the makeup design, but kind of cleaning it up and essentially making it perfect, right? That's kind of the goal. So from a lighting standpoint, let's look at how this was done here. Let me bring up my lighting chart. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and close out Photoshop. We'll get rid of that. So the setup was actually a little bit of overkill, and I'll explain why, okay? And, that happens, right? So I left my 10-foot circle in there just for the reference so that you can see it. Again, just so that we're being clear, do I go into the studio every time I'm setting up and measure out 10 feet? No, I don't. I want you folks to see that these shots that I'm doing, the overwhelming majority of them can be done in a really small space. You don't need a huge studio space. Keep in mind, my studio has a ceiling height of less than 8 feet, and this is a 10-foot diameter circle that you're looking at, right? So you don't need a ton of space. So we've got the black background. If you've been following along as I show you my shot breakdowns, I've got a key light placed further to camera right than I normally do, right? In part, that's also because you notice I have her face turned further than I normally do, right? I tend to be pretty close to the camera or a profile, not out here, but this one's a little bit different. So the light's over a little bit further. I wanted a pretty dramatic and shaped fall off on her face, but I also didn't want it to be like black. So, you see how dark that gets if I turn the reflector off, if you watch up above me. So I knew that I wanted to create the line, but I knew that I wanted it softer, hence the reflector that's coming in. So from there, the important lights, the two rim lights, this one on camera left is the one that's really doing the heavy lifting. In fact, when I turn this one off, the one on camera right, if you watch the image up above me, you're going to notice very little difference. See? Very little difference. Really all that picks up here is you get a little bit of green on the hair, which, because of the nature of the wig that we have on her, that really didn't add much to the shot. And then you pick up a little bit of green on the edge of the shoulder here, not so much on the edge of the face, right? So could I have gotten away without that one? Yeah, totally, right? So that's the first one that's kind of a little bit extra, but this is the one that's definitely giving me the green, or teal, I should say, along her shoulder line. The background light that you're seeing below, I have it off to the side a little bit because I wanted it to be a little bit uneven. That's very intentional because remember, I added, let me get the image back up here. Whoop, come on, there it is. I added a an overlay on the background, just composited a layer that had kind of these colored bokehs, but blurred them by about 150 pixels, literally, because I didn't want actual bokeh, but it's an overlay image of bokeh that I just blurred the heck out of it to get the colors. So I knew that I was going to be laying that in on top, but I wanted the teal underneath it so that I could do a blend, right? I didn't want to have to lay that bokeh image down on top of the black. So anytime I'm doing those compositing backgrounds, I still will usually put a base color into the background. And that is going to make it easier for me to blend things. And it also kind of keeps me on track when I'm in post to make sure that I'm not veering too far from the color palette that I had in mind for the image, right? But that bokeh, I had that image selected, and I apologize, I don't have it available to show you. I should have pulled it up, but I had that selected and on my computer while I was in the studio doing that shot. So I was also playing around a little bit with how much am I going to want to blur this to make it work. And finally, I realized that I was going to blur it enough to pretty much obliterate the bokeh, that I really just wanted the colors, right? And that's what we went with. So the other light that turned out to be also completely frivolous and really adds nothing to the shot, I put up one more light on the background, which I originally considered adding in a different color, like maybe throwing like an amber or an orange into it, which of course I would have had to bring it, closer to do that. I was thinking of a couple different things, and in the end, I literally wound up turning it off. So I left it in the diagram to show you because it was originally part of my original thought process. And then, as I started shooting, I realized, okay, this, is really not, it's really not doing anything for me. So the lights in the end that you see in the shot are these lights here, right? So we're at 4 lights. It's a 26-inch modifier on a Godox AD200, and then 7-inch reflectors on the AD200s that are the rim lights and the background light. Okay? All right. And so Coley said here, could you have done this in Lightroom or maybe Luminar Neo? Lightroom, no. Well, actually, let me back up and hedge my bets there for a second, Cooley. Lightroom is now capable of doing some kind of basic, compositing and replacements. But I'm gonna be completely honest, I have not played with it. Those same, because number one, I don't use Lightroom. However, those same features that we're talking about are available in Camera Raw, so they're actually part of Adobe Camera Raw. I don't think so. And I don't think I would have had the same kind of control. Same goes with Luminar Neo. I know that Skyle and the folks that put out Luminar, they're kind of working in the direction of being able to do that. But I don't think they're quite there yet. But I have not tried it in that software. My experience with Luminar Neo so far has been mostly kind of doing side-by-side comparisons with Neo and like Adobe Camera Raw, looking at Neo as basically a raw generator, which let me be clear, gang, it's much, much more than that. But that's really where I've been trying to kind of get a handle on it, because for me, if I would switch over to that completely, really what I'm looking for in the equation, I don't have a problem, even if I was working in Neo, with moving over to Photoshop just to do compositing and kind of my finishing pieces. I would have no problem using 2 pieces of software. So really where my interest in Neo is, and I'm not saying this is how you should look at it, but for me, I'm very interested in the approach that they take to how they process raw files. The UI is a little bit different, the workflow is a little bit different, and I think that Skylum has done, honestly, a brilliant job of, I guess the way that I would say it is reimagining the workflow for processing images. So that's where I see a lot of the value. Certainly with Neo, they're doing a lot with extensions and that, which essentially would kind of be the equivalent of like Photoshop plugins. So you've got all these different extensions for different pieces. But I have just not spent enough time in that yet to tell you that you could do this. I don't think you could match this completely, okay? But are we going to get to that point? Yeah, I really do think we will. And it won't just be in, Luminar. It will probably be other programs like DxO, Photolab, Affinity, that kind of stuff. I think we'll see more of that. But for now, yeah, Photoshop is still kind of the go-to for me, okay? All right, so let's see here. I don't know if I got any questions. I told you I got a couple questions that came in, but let me get the stuff that's here. Oh, Patrick's got one. I'm in the process of making my home studio. What light modifiers would you recommend for headshots and 3/4 portraits? My space is 8 by 9 with a height of 8 feet. Currently, I've got a 36-inch softbox. So the two things do not really go together, Patrick. So what I mean, and I understand what you're asking me, and I'm going to help you, but I want to be clear because I don't want to see you making decisions with the wrong information, or any of you, right? The fact that it's a home studio and the fact that it's a fairly small space, the only impact that has on your modifiers at all is one thing. And that is the idea that if you use a modifier that's too big, and I'm not going to say an amount yet, but if you use a modifier that's too big, then you're going to have a situation where you cannot keep your light above your subject. So remember, when you're lighting for a portrait, you want the light to come from above. That's what our brains expect to see. In fact, here, I can give you, I'll give you an example right here. So just looking, at this young lady here, rookie mistake for lighting. So hopefully none of you have done this, or at least you're beyond this. We start out lighting and we get our modifier and we come up with this kind of logical idea of putting the modifier so that it matches up with the person's head. In other words, her head's right kind of in the middle, right? Now, let's not laugh at the person that does that. And if you're the person that does do that, you're never going to do it again after I show you what I'm going to show you. But here's the thing, because if you know nothing about lighting, right, that's completely logical. Stick them in the middle, nice even light. Why would that be logical? Especially if it's for a beginner and they don't know a lot about lighting. Well, what do you do with ring lights? Put the person in the middle, right? But that's not good portrait lighting. And here's why. So what I want you, I'm going to lift it back up to where it was, but I want you to look at the image above me and specifically, here, let me go to a longer lens because I really want you to be able to see her face really, really well. Okay, so I want you to watch these areas right in here, inside the corners of the eyes, okay? And then even for that matter, the chin, under the lips. So as it is right now with the light kind of centered, you get this dark spot that kind of looks like somebody punched her. If you look close, we're also starting to get a little bit of a shadow above the lips as well as below. And there's shadow down here, but not a lot, right? So you keep watching the image up above. As I bring that light back up, what happens now is this softens, no shadow on the top, a little bit more shadow on the bottom, and the catch light goes to the top of the eye. When I had it down here, look at the catch light. It's in the middle of the eye, which is almost kind of like alien-like, right? Our brains expect to see the catch lights in the top part of the eye. So, Patrick, going back to your question, the way you want to decide on modifiers is for your lighting style and your lighting technique. The only lighting style that you're not going to be able to do in that kind of a space is if you're one of these people that wants to work with a 7-foot modifier, right? Because a 7-foot modifier means that even if you have your person sitting on the ground, way too much of the light is going to be below them. And you're going to get that zombie lighting with you're creating shadows on the tops of the cheeks, top of the lips, tops of the brows if they have deep set brows, all that kind of stuff. You don't want that, right? So for me, I work with literally, and over the course of the last year, not exaggerating, I sold, I had probably about 40 different modifiers. Over the years you collect a lot, and then you start doing YouTube and people send you a bunch of stuff. I got rid of all of them. This is what I have for modifiers at this point. This is it. I have two 32-inch shoot-through umbrellas. I have one 38-inch umbrella that you can put a sock over. I have one 32-inch beauty dish, which is also probably going to get sold because I never use it. And I use a 26-inch Fodex Raja collapsible softbox round. And I use a 33-inch Fodex Rani collapsible softbox, which is round and super shallow. Love it. That's it. That's all I own now. That's all I use because all the rest of the stuff was just foo-foo, right? I used to use a lot of rectangular softboxes because I had it in my mind, well, you know, person's vertical to the rectangular and getting, you know, more spread of light. The fact of the matter is I can do everything with the round softbox that I can with the rectangular softbox, and with the round softbox, I get a round catch light. Why is that important? Catch light from the sun is round. By age 2, our brains are hardwired to expect that round catch light coming from the sun. That's why you guys frequently hear me, you know, make comments about this triangle lighting that a lot of headshot photographers do and all that. It creates catch lights that are distracting. They're simply distracting, right? Now, as a photographer, I'm certainly much more in tune to that, and I pay more attention to that than the average person, but it's still distracting. So I'm just not a fan of it, right? But yeah, so what I would encourage you to do, Patrick, is, you know, if the 36 inches is working for you, use that. But if you're going to buy any new modifiers, I would look for round ones. And I would try to work between like the 26-inch to 33-inch range in there. There's good sizes for being able to do head and shoulders, and also even kind of waist up type shots and get really even lighting, just absolutely fine light. That would be my advice. Okay. All right. Let's just see if there were any others in here. And if not, I'll go to, oh, we got a couple here. FN89. What's the main difference between Rembrandt light and Rembrandt cross light? I've heard it brought up a few times. I couldn't tell you, FN89. Literally couldn't tell you. There is no such thing as Rembrandt lighting. It's bullshit. Okay. Here's why. 1, Rembrandt didn't use Rembrandt lighting. 2, it's boring. It's predictable. So I don't use it. If you asked me to show you a good example of Rembrandt lighting, I'd probably fail the test. I could get close, but I'd probably fail the test. And as far as what Rembrandt crosslight is, I have no idea. Here's the problem with what you're trying to do. Stop naming your lighting. Because once you name your lighting, you're cataloging your lighting, which means that you're always setting your light up the same way, which means that your pictures become boring and predictable. And you're not actually really learning how to light then. Because what's going to happen the first time you get in a situation and Rembrandt light doesn't work, or whatever the hell Rembrandt crosslight is doesn't work, then what are you going to do? You're going to go to your notebook and find another named lighting source to, right? Don't learn lighting that way. I promise you, it is not the way to learn lighting. I mean, look, if you're going to go take a college program from some idiot with an MFA, I can't resist myself. I always say that. I know I'm going to get in trouble. But look, you know, somebody with an MFA that's teaching photography, not only they're going to make you shoot film, but they're going to, you know, make you learn all those lighting things, and that way you come out, and it's great. You can go replicate 10 different kinds of lighting and 10 different poses, and you can be the most boring photographer with a degree in the entire world, right? So I wouldn't learn lighting that way. I mean, I literally wouldn't. But I don't want to guess at what that Rembrandt crosslight is, because I honestly have no clue. So, Michael, I switched from Lightroom to Capture One a couple of years ago. In Lightroom, it was a simple double click to set the white and the black points. Is there a similar function in Capture One? I'm sure there is, Michael, but I couldn't tell you. I don't use Capture One. Most people don't need Capture One, and I hate to tell you, Michael, like, it sounds like you're actually not using all of the best features of Capture One. I own Capture One. I pay for the damn subscription. I use it for one thing and one thing only: to tether. That's it. But when I'm in the studio, I mean, you guys saw the original file of the cover shot tonight, right? And how close it was to the finished. I don't need Capture One. Could I use it? I could. But honestly, I'm too lazy to go through the learning curve to master it because I don't need it. It's not going to get me something that I'm not already capable of doing. Um, a lot of photographers, I'm sorry, they're using Capture One, and I'm not saying necessarily you, Michael, but I am challenging you. Do you really need Capture One? Um, when it comes to tethering, a lot of photographers could be using a program like Smart Shooter, for tethering, and then still going through Adobe products. I find I won't lie to you, the older I get, the easier I want it to be. Done. Capture One is amazing software, extremely powerful. I would say hands down, it is the most powerful raw generator on the market, but it's not something that most of us need, right? It's just not. But I'm sorry, I don't know about the black point thing. I would have to say that honestly, now's where you're going to get in trouble and you'll get called out here. There's this website. I'll share it with you in a second here. Whoops, it would help if I spelled right here. Let me just fix my spelling. Yeah, gosh, look at that. So here, Michael, I'm going to share you an inside trick with you, right? There's this website. It's called Google. Check it out, man. It's actually like pretty cool shit. So I just typed in how to set the black and white points in Capture One. And here, I'm going to give you the full URL there. And that way you can check out all the results. So yeah, anyway, but yeah, I don't want to guess because I'm gonna mislead you, but check that out. And look, to be clear, if you're sorry, Michael, I couldn't resist, man. If you're happy with your workflow with Capture One, now that I said all that, let me be really clear, because again, so I don't get in trouble, folks. Capture One's amazing, but the reason I say that, and I'm saying it more lately. In fact, I had a conversation last night in class, I thought, about that very thing. The more that I'm talking to people that are using Capture One, I find that so many people are using Capture One kind of for the same reason so many amateur photographers using ProPhoto. ProPhoto is amazing lighting. It's amazing, but it's not amazing in the sense that you spend $1,000 and suddenly your pictures are incredible, right? It's not that kind of amazing. It doesn't do the work for us. So that's kind of what Capture One is, right? There's a learning curve. And so I'm just kind of doing the pushback with people to say, look, you're spending money on a subscription. Do a little gut check and make sure that you're really actually getting value out of it. Because if you're not really well versed with that software, that means you're not getting the value out of it, which means it's probably a much less expensive solution. The software alone doesn't make your images better. So as I explained, the only reason I had that subscription is for tethering. It's the fastest solution that I found. Because I'm very type A and I want things quick, right? So let's see here. F89. Also, why shallow softbox versus a deep softbox? I missed part of what you were saying. So for the kind of softboxes I'm using, like the Raja and the Rani, those are the names, okay? The Raja's got a little bit of a parabolic shape to it, but it honestly isn't making squat difference in the output of the light on those two boxes. What's nice about the shallow box for me is I do work in a small studio space, and any space, whether it's on the floor or in the air that I can save, I want to save. So having a shallow box is great. But before any of you rush out now and buy a shallow box because I said that, do not put a shallow box on a Fresnel head, like a speed light or the speed light head that goes with like a Godox 8200. It is not going to light the whole box. So if you're going to go with a shallow box like the Ronnie's, you need to be using a bare bulb, right? You absolutely need to be using a bare bulb. Okay? All right. Let's see. Gerhard, front and back focus. Oh, God. Okay. I'm sorry. This is one of those ones that people like dig their heels in. Since I also shoot mirrorless, I realized how bad was my phase autofocus at my DSLRs. Can you tell me about your autofocus calibration? How often in your DSLR period? So first of all, I went over to the dark side, Gerhard. I don't shoot DSLRs. I'm a mirrorless guy. And I will say this, and this will piss off some people, but you know what? In fact, I just had this conversation in Las Vegas. Last week, I had this conversation with an iconic, very famous, very well-known photojournalist. This man has shot presidents. He shot the most famous picture of Mark Zuckerberg when he founded Facebook. He has shot the covers of Newsweek magazine. And I picked up his Nikon mirrorless camera, take a picture for him, and I noticed that the focus wasn't working. And he's like, it's back button focus. And I'm like, why are you shooting back button focus on this mirrorless Nikon? And so we got into this big debate. So here's the thing, right? On DSLRs, depending on what you shoot and depending on your shooting style, back button focus actually made a lot of sense. Sports shooters, news shooters, that fraction of a second that it would take for the camera to engage and focus when you press, half press the shutter release could cost you a shot. So back button focus allowed you to use the focus and the shutter independently, made all the sense in the world. My Sonys, and so not every brand, and I honestly, I can't speak to Canon. I know Nikon now has tracking. I don't know how good it is. I'll report back to you when I find out from him because he's actually going to experiment with the tracking the way that I describe it to him now. Now with my Sonys, not my studio camera, but the cameras that I take out and about, right, when I'm out shooting, which are the A7 IVs. I use 2 of them. I have them set on continuous autofocus tracking. And what's great about those suckers is all I have to do is put my subject inside that box. And I can move the box around, but I don't have to. So I actually just leave the box in the middle of the frame now. But when I pick up the camera, I put my subject in that box and then I compose. And wherever my subject goes, and by the way, my subject, it could be somebody's knee, right? It's going to follow that. And when I press the release, boom, I've got the image done. It's amazingly simple and amazingly fast, amazingly accurate. Sony has done an incredible job with the tracking technology. So that's the way I work with it. But here's what I will tell you, Gerhard. If you are already using like front focus and you're not having problems, which I realize you're having some problems, but we're going to get to those problems, the calibration stuff. But otherwise, if you're not having problems, don't switch, right? The people that use it, well, there's two kind of people that use it. There are people that use it and actually find benefit in it, real benefit, like photojournalists with DSLRs. And then there are people that watch too many YouTube videos and use it because some guy on YouTube convinced them, oh, you should use this, right? I'm just saying, that's how it is. Keeping it real, folks. But as far as like how often do I have my autofocus calibrated in that, it's not a matter of how often. It's a matter of if I'm noticing there's a problem, then I will have that done. Knock on wood, I've never had that problem. Literally never had to get a camera calibrated at all. But yeah, if you are convinced that your camera is having an issue, then I would send it off and do it. You can do some of the calibration yourself, but personally, that's one of those things for me I won't touch. If I've got an issue with that, it's going out and being done properly. So that would be the way that I would approach it. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Lamont, what's the best way to get a background white? Buy white background. I'm sorry. No, here, Lamont, I know that was like a jerk answer, but honestly, it was an honest answer. Let me share something with you for you to watch here. Let's switch that over. I'm going to go to my YouTube channel. I'm going to type in white background, and I'm going to share a video that you're going to want to watch. Simple white background lighting technique. So I'm actually going to give you 2 videos, and you should watch both of them, okay? First one is that one right there. So that's the white background lighting technique, but that's actually using a softbox as the background. You may not have that, right? So the other thing that you're going to watch then is this video here, the best color background. because that's actually got a little bit of the information you're looking for. But I'm assuming what you're really trying to figure out, Lamont, is, hey, I've got a white background, but I need it to be white, not like off-white. That means you're simply going to put a light behind it, right? And you want that light on the background to be a stop and a half brighter than the light that's on your subject, right? So if you were to take a meter, and if your subject metered at f8 with your key light, then you would want that background light to meter at f11, or halfway between 11 and 16, right? f16 would be the max. In other words, no more than 2 stops. Depending on how far your subject is away from the background, once you start hitting 2 stops, you run the risk of starting to get like a halo and a glow, right? How many lights do you need to light the white background? That honestly depends on how much of the background is actually showing in your photo. If you've got your subject relatively close to the background, you could potentially get that background light, get it white with just one light. If the subject's a little further away, you may need 2 lights to be able to cover it evenly. Is a Pentax camera good for portrait work? Gosh, is my buddy Joe Doozle here from California? I'm sorry. He's a Pentax user. And I will tell you, he does great portraits with it. Lamont, you could take amazing portraits. As I showed in the beginning of the show tonight, you could take amazing portraits with an iPhone. And I'm not exaggerating, right? So if that Pentax camera has a decent lens on it, and when I say a decent lens, meaning it gives you sharp images, and it's not like a wide angle lens. You're going to want like a short to medium length telephoto, right? And if you can either fire some flash units with it, or if you have LED lights to work with, there's no reason in the world that you can't use a Pentax to take great portraits. When you ask a question like that, Lamont, and I'm kind of glad you asked me, because I'm going to give you this warning. Don't ask that question. Here's why. Most people will automatically respond by telling you the best camera for portraits is the kind of camera they have. Well, I have a feeling just the fact that you're asking me these 2 questions that you've asked, you don't have a ton of spare money. And that's okay. Trust me, when I was a kid and I learned photography, I didn't have a ton of spare money. So, in other words, it's easy for somebody to say, oh, yeah, you should have this 61 megapixel this or 100 megapixel that and $1,000 flash head for this and that. But I have a hunch, since you're asking this question and since you're working with a Pentax now, you probably don't have that kind of money. So those answers don't do you any good, right? The way that you approach this, if you're just learning and you're trying to build your skills, I would encourage you, stick with the gear that you have, the little bit of gear that you may have, for as long as you possibly can. Because here's what it's going to do for you. It's going to force you to actually learn photography. It's going to force you to learn how to properly expose things. It's going to force you to learn how to properly light things. It's going to force you to learn how to solve problems. And then what you're also going to do is you're going to have a much better sense, as a result of doing that, of what pieces of gear will actually have the biggest impact on your photography. There is no piece of gear that will make your photography better, period. There is only gear that will allow you to do the work more efficiently, and that will potentially raise the quality level. But if you don't know what you're really doing with that gear, you could go win the lottery, buy all the best gear in the world. It's not going to help. It's not going to help your photography, right? That's the challenge. So yes, as much as I like to joke and pick on Pentax cameras, Pentax cameras are actually great. Back in the day, for a little while, way back in the day, I used a Pentax K1000 film camera. And man, I'll tell you what, if Pentax would put those cameras back on the market today, I'll bet you they would sell a crap ton of those cameras. It was like the most simple, most basic camera that you could find, but that's what was so beautiful about it. It was just pure photography with a roll of film in the camera. Great camera, absolutely. Screw mount lenses, absolutely the best. So yeah, they should. It's a shame they don't re-release that, because believe me, in today's world, they'd sell a ton of them if they did that. All right, so look, before I run out of time, there's one question I promised that I would answer tonight. This came in from an email. It's from a gentleman named Brian. He attended my pre-con class at Imaging USA a year ago. So this was Imaging USA that was in Washington, D.C., right? And so his message said, you made mention in your class that you didn't feel that your images, meaning mine, were print competition worthy. So for those of you that don't know, PPA, Professional Photographers of America, sponsors an ongoing print competition. And actually, there's several print competitions that they do, right? He goes on to say, that statement keeps coming back up in my mind and really what you meant by it. And more so, what you felt makes a good print competition image. And so he also goes on to reference, probably speaking about the merit image review images, which are a very important thing with PPA, especially if you're going for your certifications and that kind of thing. He goes on to say, your images are captivating, well thought out, composed, and better than a lot of images I see out there in the photography world. And I know print competition work is different than just normal client work, but it's kept me curious. Any chance you would care to elaborate more? So first of all, Brian, thank you very much for the kind words. I appreciate that. So I guess part of what I'm saying with that statement is my ongoing defiance when it comes to print competitions. So keep in mind, I make money from PPA. I do a lot of teaching through PPA. And this is an area where I get myself in trouble. So the things I'm about to say, they know that I say them. They wish I wouldn't say them. And I understand their side of the equation, but I'll tell you mine, right? Traditionally, in camera clubs, organizations like PPA, prints and competition have been a big deal, right? And that's going back decades. And that's not something that PPA started. Honestly, camera clubs are big. It's the industry. In these organizations, traditionally, meaning not now, traditionally, the people that would win all the ribbons and get all the points for print competitions, they were the hot shots. They were the big deals. And there was an expectation when you join these organizations, traditionally, that you're going to participate in the print competition. Why would you not? Right? That's how you get better. That's how you learn. And there's a whole litany of reasons that they give you. And they're not necessarily wrong. Okay? But then along comes Joe. From the beginning with my photography, I was very defiant. I'm not saying better, I'm saying defiant. I was taught photography in the 70s. So portraits, key light, or main light, never key light, main light, fill light, hair light, background light, exact placement, exact ratios. I was taught Rembrandt lighting. I was taught basic poses, right? All that kind of stuff. Everything had rules. Everything had to be done this way. If you're photographing a woman, you photograph down on them. If you're photographing a man for portraits, you photographed up on them, right? Rules. I hated that. That's not why I got into photography. I enjoyed the people that I was meeting. And I enjoyed the creative aspects of photography, trying to tell a story, right? So being told that I had to do this, I didn't enjoy it at all. And then when it comes to the organizations like the camera clubs and that, the reality of it is that there are so many rules and guidelines that you have to follow just to be able to get your images accepted in the competitions that it's kind of like dumbing your image down, right? You're not allowed to be creative in your own way. You can only be creative inside their box, right? They've got this box, which is all the rules. You can only create within that box. It's kind of like a NASCAR race. NASCAR back in the 70s, it was rough and tumble. And any time you watched, I used to shoot NASCAR back in the 70s. They'd come to Pocono Raceway in Pennsylvania, and I would go shoot, and you knew you were going to see some epic crashes at a NASCAR race. And it's not that you never see epic crashes now, but you don't see nearly as many. And in part because now there's so many rules around NASCAR, like down to the millimeter. Those cars get measured before, during, after a race, and they check all the pieces in them. You can't have equipment that the other guy doesn't have. So basically everybody's driving the exact same car, And indeed, there's still a lot of skill involved. It's, who makes the right choices with getting new, gas or changing tires, and who takes the curb a little bit tighter, shaves off a fraction of a second, and wins. But it's not the same, right? There's much less creativity involved. That's why recently, a couple months back, there was a NASCAR driver that at the end of a race, it made, big social media news. At the end of a race, this guy literally plowed into the wall and drove his car along the wall coming out of the last turn and across the finish line to win the race because he was like in third or fourth place. And that was the only way he stood a chance to be able to pass all the cars. And people were like, oh my God, this guy's nuts, because he essentially crashed his car to win the race. That's brilliant stuff, because that's thinking way outside the box. And they even still went and had to go and convene the rules committee to reevaluate, did he break any rules? And do we have to put more rules in place so nobody can be that creative again? Right? So that's kind of where photography competitions are for me. So Brian, the specifics are behind that statement. And look, I also want to be really clear. I'm not trying to disrespect the people that are into the competitions. And I'm not trying to disrespect the organizations that hold them. But I will say this to all the organizations that hold them: PPA, camera clubs, everybody. If you want to survive in the future, the younger generation does not like these competitions. The younger generation does not want to be judged. Listen to the younger generation. Listen to what's important to them. And honestly, I would argue they're smarter than we are. I really would. But the fact is, they don't want to be judged. They want to be able to do their thing. They want to be seen for who they are. They want to create the way they want to be creating. But the problem is they come into these organizations, and even though these organizations welcome them, and they try to be nice to them, it's still the people that get all the ribbons and all the points that get the most attention. So at some point, these organizations have to figure out how to flip that equation, right? It's not to take away the competitions. It's not to devalue the competitions, but it's to make it really, really clear that competitions aren't everything, and competitions don't make it great. Competitions just mean that you entered into a game and you played the game better than the other people that played it. And again, no disrespect. If you're in a competition, it's good for you. Honestly, a good friend of mine travels all around the world each year because he enters competitions and he wins them all around the world. His mindset is one that he loves that game of having to navigate that path of rules in order to do it, right? So I have a lot of respect for the people that are really into it, but that is just not my thing. So Brian, to answer your question, for me, the reason being that I say, my stuff's not worthy is because a lot of my images, like take my backlit images, for instance, the real dreamy ones, right? Where there's no light in front of the subject, that stuff would actually be rejected from a lot of competitions. Not all, but a lot of competitions, right? The picture that I had on the billboard a couple years ago, that was a competition. It was an organization called Art Pop. They come out of North Carolina. And it was being judged here locally by 3 people with MFAs. I knew that before I entered the contest. And I knew damn well that I had no chance in hell of 3 people with MFAs picking that image. I knew that they simply wouldn't, because it's a very kind of commercial image and it's bold. It breaks so many rules, not to mention that it's completely symmetrical composition, right? I knew that it wouldn't make it. And indeed, the 3 judges did not pick it. But I knew that that competition had a People's Choice Award. And that meant that the organizers were going to pick, I think it was like 5 images that they were going to post online and allow people to go vote. And I knew that if I could get into a People's Choice online, I had a chance at winning. And I did. And then the image was on a billboard for a year, right? Because again, I knew the art people would say, no, he didn't follow any of the rules. He ignored them and they wouldn't even consider it. And indeed they didn't. And ironically, that billboard image, this organization now uses that image for their marketing. It's one of the most popular billboards they ever did. But the art people, they don't want nothing to do with it. So that's why I say my stuff's really not worthy in that regard, Brian. But yeah, it's a tough subject because look, the people that like it, love it. The people that don't like it, like me, yeah, I have no patience for it. But it's not meant, none of this is meant in disrespect for the people who do competitions, folks. It's just, honestly, it's hopefully a bug in the ear of camera club organizers, PPA people, say, look, you want to keep building these organizations and you want to keep these organizations viable into the future. And believe me, PPA is actually doing a great job with that. But it's all about realizing that, new generations have new priorities, new value sets. And it's respecting that, but making them feel equally as important, right? And equally as special in the process. Otherwise, why should they spend their money and why should they participate, right? Well, anyway, gang, thank you for another great conversation. I am over time as usual. Shocker. Listen, have a great week. Don't forget. So, by the way, hopefully I'll get to see some of you down in Austin Saturday. Okay. But I thank you for watching. I hope that you found some of this valuable tonight. Please remember, before you leave, hit that thumbs up if you haven't done already. Help people find out about the show. And, the real news, you don't get back the days you waste. So please go pick up that camera and shoot something, because your best shot, it's your next shot, gang. Do the work. Adios. Take care.